començant per el Coronel Lee, és oficial retirat de les Forces de Defensa d'Irlanda, graduat també per el US Army Infantry School i l'Escola d'Infanteria també de l'exèrcit francès. Ha servit pràcticament en totes les missions possibles de pau que hi podrien haver, des del Líban, Xipre, la força que hi havia també d'observació després de la guerra Iran-Iraq, que més justament el va agafar amb l'inici de la invasió iraquiana de Kuwait. Posteriorment va ser oficial d'estat major a la missió de les Nacions Unides a Somàlia. Alhora, també va estar com a observador posteriorment a la guerra després de la guerra entre Rússia i Geòrgia el 2008, i alhora ha estat fent d'observador de diversos països, tant de l'Àsia, a l'Amèrica Llatina com l'Àfrica. Bàsicament, allà on hi ha hagut un conflicte, el Coronel Lee hi ha estat en missions de pau de les Nacions Unides, i en el cas d'Irlanda que ha estat un dels referents.
Well, thank you very much, President of the Society. First of all, it's a great privilege to address the Societats d'Estudis Militars de Catalunya on the subject of Ireland's experience of international peacekeeping. Since June 1958, not a day has passed without an Irish soldier deployed under the UN flag somewhere around the world. Today, Irish peacekeepers are present in over half the world's peacekeeping missions, from Mali to Lebanon, from the Democratic Republic of Congo to Cyprus. Ireland is the largest per capita contributor in the Western European and others grouping at the United Nations. I think I'll show the video clip. I thought that was the first of the sequence. Yeah. What happens now? I'll just give a general idea of it. This was actually it was a speech given by President Kennedy when he visited Ireland in May 1963. But the Army added on clips of all our missions since then. Essentially, Kennedy was praising Ireland for taking its place among the nations of the world. And now in this sequence here, we see that the guards, our police, were also with us on many of the missions. So this is where the speech began. Kennedy gave his speech to the Irish Dáil, the Parliament, and these are the first troops mission was in the Congo. You can see how basic the equipment and dress of the soldiers were. Those, look at the Ford armoured car, which was handed over by the British or acquired from them back in 1921. This was the commander in Jadaville, and this shows you how far they were from Dublin. The missions, Lebanon was the biggest, longest term mission that we had. It's just a visual thing, just watch the actual video without comment. This was the funeral of Irish soldiers that died on UN service.
The major forum for your nation's greater role in world affairs is that of protecting.
This is just a recent mission of rescuing migrants in the Mediterranean. Back to Lebanon again. And this is, I think, Chad or Liberia, one of the African missions since I retired. But this was the beginning, and you can see how the soldiers were in the same uniforms that were worn in the First World War. And there's one of your colleagues. And so this is only they're marching with arms reversed. They're coming from a funeral, in other words, after doing the death drills for somebody who had died. And so there we go. So that's that clip over. Now the next thing, there should be one slide showing the deployment. Right. So you see there from the figure on top is 579. It'll fluctuate from day to day as people come and go from missions, and it covers all missions, peacekeeping missions under the UN mandate, and done by NATO and by European Union missions which were authorised by the UN. UNIFIL is currently our most important mission, and we have a joint battalion with the Poles at the moment. So every 6 months they have 2/3 and we have 1/3, and the commanders change, and every 6 months it changes again. We had a similar arrangement with the Finns in the past. UNDOF is important, and then the smaller missions, which are Kosovo, Bosnia, Rome is just a cadre, and then Mali, interesting enough, we have 2 missions there. One dealing with is a training mission to train the Mali army, and the other is a ranger mission, which is working with the German special forces. Western Sahara, again, is a small mission now. New York, a cadre, UNSO, important, the oldest mission, set up by Count Bernadotte back in 1948. UN True Supervision Organization, I should spell that out. And DR Congo, at the moment, we're back, we actually have 3 people there. So in the 1980s, Ireland had between 800 and 850 personnel serving on overseas missions at any one time. Due to prolonged underfunding, the Defence Forces has been greatly reduced in size over the years, and consequently also the number of personnel serving on missions is currently varying between 500 and 600 all ranks. If, however, we were to take a hypothetical EU member state with, let us say, a population of 7.5 million people, you could expect that country to maintain perhaps 1,000 personnel abroad on peace support operations. It's very prestigious and to get a seat on the UN Security Council. So the election of Ireland to a seat on the UN Security Council, which was for the 4th time in the current 2021 to 22 session, it was a great success. The biggest factor in our favour during the campaign for a seat was the contribution made by over 62 years to UN peacekeeping by the Defence Forces and the Irish Police. This month, September 2021, Ireland holds the rotating presidency of the Security Council. Back in the Cold War years, Ireland was a world superpower in UN peacekeeping, alongside neutral and non-aligned Austria, Finland and Sweden. Then, as now, the main purpose of the UN is the preservation of world peace. All its other activities are peripheral to this goal. The Security Council is the most powerful institution, and a seat at that table is a presence at the very heart of the UN decision-making process. In times of crisis, the Security Council is the most important diplomatic forum in the world. It is also where Irish diplomats have played decisive roles in conflict resolution during the 3 previous occasions when Ireland held a seat. With a seat on the Security Council, Ireland is able, once again, to play a frontline role in preserving world peace. Roll of Honour. A total of 87 Irish soldiers died while serving with overseas support missions. This includes 47 in Lebanon and 26 in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now I want to talk about the triple lock. In order to participate in a peace support operation, Ireland has a self-imposed triple lock. These are conditions that must be met. These conditions are: first, there must be a government decision. It then must have Dáil approval, which is the lower house of our parliament, and it must have UN authorisation. Under an amendment to the Defence Act 1960, Dáil approval is required for any mission involving 12 armed personnel or more. So far, this condition has not caused any problems. However, when a rapid reaction is required, this could be a problem if 12 or more personnel were required. It was significant that during the recent evacuation from Kabul, Ireland sent a team of 9 Rangers, which are special forces, and 2 diplomats. 9 plus 2 equals 11, the maximum number that could be sent without recalling the Dáil. The big problem is not Dáil approval, but the requirement to have UN authorisation for missions authorised by resolutions of the UN Security Council or the UN General Assembly. Security Council resolutions require the agreement of all 5 permanent members of the Council: China, France, Russia, Great Britain and the US. Irish participation in an overseas mission will be blocked if even one of these 5 permanent member states uses its veto. Such overseas missions can be UN-mandated missions or UN-authorised missions, conducted by regional organisations such as the European Union, NATO, and the African Union, etc. So it is a bizarre situation where we have allowed these 5 nations the power to decide an Irish foreign policy issue. It's our own problem. We imposed it on ourselves. This has already happened in Fyrom, former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, which is now the Republic of North Macedonia. Back in 1999, when China blocked the renewal of the UN mandate in response to Fyrom signing a trade deal with Taiwan. As this mission was not UN authorised, Ireland was unable to join the first EU Common Security and Defence Policy mission, Concordia, in 2003. But what if our vital national interests were at stake? For example, what if hundreds of Irish citizens had to be rescued from a war zone and a permanent member of the Security Council vetoed the authorising UN resolution for, let us say, a European Union mission? Ireland's credibility in the EU would be undermined if we declined to participate in such a mission. The problem is that successive Irish governments are afraid to adjust the triple lock in case they are accused of going soft on Irish neutrality. There are institutional weaknesses in the UN system. First of all, there's one very important guideline which is there for deploying and conducting a peacekeeping mission. The first, there must be consent of the parties involved. We just dwell on that for a moment. The parties involved are fighting, they must agree to a UN mission. The second is impartiality. The UN cannot take sides in a particular dispute. And then the use of force only in self-defence or in defence of the mandate. These guidelines are necessary restraints, but still can limit the UN force's ability to intervene in crisis situations. As I mentioned previously, the UN is not a democratic organisation in that the 5 permanent members of the Security Council wield disproportionate power. In addition, UN member states may support peacekeeping mandates and then fail to provide the peacekeeping forces with the resources they need to carry out the mandate. Weak rules of engagement have led to UN troops becoming hostages to fortune and in some cases literally being taken hostage. 42 years ago, this observer explained the peacekeeper's dilemma with the observation that in peacekeeping, he who hesitates wins. And if the UN gets both sides in a conflict to hesitate, peace wins. The institutional flaws of the organisation impact all the way down to the peacekeepers on the ground, who are left to hold the can. These institutional flaws were responsible for the 2 most traumatic events in the history of Irish peacekeeping. Both happened in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Zaire. In September 1960, a small patrol of 11 Irish soldiers was ambushed by Baluba tribesmen at a place called Niamba in Kivu province. 9 were killed and 2 survived. In September 1961, a company of 155 Irish soldiers were deployed to protect the white community at a mining town called Jarroville in Katanga province. This white community did not want or request UN protection. They were employees of the Union Minière Company, which was backing an independent Katanga and were opposed to the UN presence. A large force of Katangi gendarmerie and international mercenaries surrounded and attacked the Irish positions. After 5 days of intense fighting, the Irish troops ran out of ammunition and water. 2 attempts by the UN forces in Katanga to break through failed. A ceasefire was agreed, but dishonoured by the attacking forces. The company had no viable option but to surrender. Our Netherlands comrades will always remember the horror of Srebrenica. Lessons learned from overseas missions. All UN member states considering taking part in UN peace support missions or UN authorised missions led by regional organisations such as NATO and the European Union should be mandate conscious. The countries should be mandate conscious of what they're asking the soldiers to do. In particular, care should be taken that the mandate is appropriate to the situation and that the forces deployed are sufficient and properly equipped to carry out the mandate. Mission creep should be avoided. This is where a mission that started is given additional tasks later on, but not the additional means to carry out those tasks. Military peace support missions will not of themselves solve a political problem. It can, however, stabilise the security situation to allow time for negotiated settlement of disputes. National contingents should be fully equipped before being deployed to a mission. Never trust an international organisation, such as the UN or the EU, with promises to provide equipment for their contingents until the equipment is actually being delivered. Member states participating in peace support operations for the first time are well advised to build up corporate knowledge of peacekeeping first. Officers and NCOs should be sent to training schools and centres which specialise in peacekeeping, such as the UN Training School in Ireland and other similar institutions, mainly in the Nordic countries. Ideally, new member states should take part in observer missions first, before participating in with troops missions. Participating in peace support operations is very much about risk sharing. It is not simply good enough to pick the easy and less dangerous roles and leave the more dangerous roles to other countries. Public support is essential for a democratic nation to take part in a peace support mission. In this regard, the public should be kept informed of the risks involved, and they should understand the sacrifices that are being made in the cause of peace. In Ireland's case, it is still a great source of national pride to see men and women of our defence forces play their part in preserving world peace. Newly independent nations regard participation in UN peacekeeping missions as the ultimate recognition by the international community of their place in the world. Nations that are still working their way towards independence should take note that they too will be expected to play a similar role in preserving world peace. In this presentation, I have deliberately struck a cautionary note about participating in peace support operations. However, I want to make a final tribute to the UN organisation itself. Despite its institutional weaknesses, the UN has managed to be highly effective in preserving world peace. Without successive peacekeeping missions containing world regional conflicts, we would truly have faced Armageddon. Without the UN, the apocalyptic survivors of World War III would by now be staggering around the nuclear wastelands trying to avoid World War IV. Thank you for your attention.